The message traveled across the stars for 3,000 years before anyone noticed it. Deep in the heart of the Galactic Empire, a monitoring station picked up strange signals coming from an unremarkable spiral arm of the galaxy. The signals were primitive by Imperial standards. Radio waves, television broadcasts, simple electromagnetic noise that any advanced civilization would have abandoned millions of years ago. But the content of those signals made the Emperor himself sit up and take notice. The signals showed a species that had crawled out of the mud only yesterday by galactic standards. They had barely learned to split atoms. They had only just escaped their own gravity well. Their ships were slow, clumsy things that took years to cross even the shortest distances between worlds. And yet these creatures called themselves the masters of their world. They built monuments to their own greatness. They wrote stories about conquering the stars. They dreamed of empires that would stretch across the cosmos. Emperor Zalveth IX found this amusing. The Galactic Empire had stood for 50,000 years. It controlled 3 million star systems. 100,000 different species lived under its protection, all of them grateful for the order and stability the empire provided. The emperor's word was law across a volume of space so vast that light itself took centuries to cross it. And now these primitive humans thought they would conquer the stars. The emperor decided to show them the truth of their situation. He assembled the finest diplomatic fleet in imperial history, 10,000 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet, 100,000 support vessels carrying diplomats, scientists, and cultural advisors. The fleet was led by Ambassador Crixthon, the most experienced negotiator in the empire, a being who had absorbed 600 species into the imperial fold without firing a single shot. The journey to Earth took only moments. Imperial ships did not crawl through space like primitive vessels. They simply stepped from one point to another, folding the fabric of reality like paper. The fleet emerged above Earth in perfect formation, 10,000 warships arranged in the sacred pattern of imperial supremacy. Weapons charged but not aimed, a display of power meant to awe and humble. Ambassador Crixthon broadcast the standard greeting on all frequencies. "People of Earth," he announced in flawless English, having learned the language during the brief journey, "you are now under the protection of the Galactic Empire. Do not be afraid. We come in peace, bearing gifts of knowledge and technology beyond your imagination. Prepare to receive your new masters with joy and gratitude." The humans did not respond. Crixthon waited. Perhaps they were overwhelmed. Perhaps their primitive communication systems could not handle the advanced transmission. Perhaps they were simply too stunned to speak. After an hour, a single message came back. "Please hold. Your call is important to us. A representative will be with you shortly." Crixthon did not understand. He consulted with his cultural advisors. They were equally confused. No species had ever responded to first contact with such a message. Most species fell to their knees in worship. Others screamed in terror. A few foolish ones attempted to fight, but no species had ever asked the Empire to wait. 3 days passed. The Imperial fleet remained in orbit, waiting. Crixthon sent increasingly urgent messages. The humans responded with apologies for the delay and promises that someone would be with them soon. Finally, on the 4th day, a small shuttle rose from the planet's surface. It was a crude thing, burning chemical fuel like something from a museum. The shuttle docked with the ambassador's flagship, and 3 humans stepped aboard. They were unremarkable creatures. 2 arms, 2 legs, soft skin, no natural weapons or armor. They wore simple suits of synthetic fiber. They carried no gifts, no weapons, no ceremonial items of any kind. Their leader was a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She introduced herself as Secretary General Chen, the chosen representative of Earth's unified government. Crixthon towered over her. He was 9 feet tall, covered in ceremonial armor that had been worn by 1,000 ambassadors before him. His scales gleamed with the light of 1,000 conquered suns. His voice could shake mountains. "Secretary General," he said, looking down at the small human, "do you understand what is happening here?" Chen smiled politely. "You've come to offer us membership in your empire." "Not membership," Crixthon corrected. "Protection. Your species is young and weak. The galaxy is dangerous. Without our guidance, you would destroy yourselves within a century. We offer you the chance to survive, to grow, to eventually become a valuable part of our great civilization. That's very kind, Chen said. May we see the terms? Crixton was taken aback. The terms? The contract, the agreement, whatever document outlines our rights and obligations as a protected species. There is no need for you to review the terms. The treaty is standard. All species accept it without question. Chen's smile did not waver. I'm sure they do, but we'd like to read it anyway. For the first time in his long career, Crixton felt uncertain. He ordered his staff to produce a copy of the Standard Client Species Integration Treaty. It was a massive document, thousands of pages long, written in 17 different imperial languages. Chen took the document and handed it to one of her companions. We'll need some time to review this. How much time? A few weeks should be enough. Crixton's scales flushed with color. Weeks? The Emperor expects your answer within days. Please convey our apologies to the Emperor, Chen said, but we never sign anything without reading it first. I'm sure he understands. She turned and walked back toward her shuttle. Crixton stood in silence, watching her go. In 600 first contact missions, no species had ever turned their back on him. No species had ever asked to review the treaty. No species had ever made him wait. He returned to his communications chamber and opened a channel to the Imperial Palace. Emperor Zalveth Des Moines appeared on the screen, his ancient face carved with the weight of centuries. Report, Ambassador. Your Magnificence, the humans are different. Different how? Crixton struggled to find the words. They are not afraid. They are not awed. They looked upon our fleet as if it were a mild curiosity. They asked to review the treaty before signing. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. They asked to review it? Yes, Your Magnificence. They said they never sign anything without reading it first. Interesting. The Emperor leaned back on his throne. What do you make of them? I am uncertain. Either they are too stupid to recognize the danger they are in, or they are too delusional to accept reality. Perhaps both. Or perhaps neither. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Continue your mission, Ambassador. Give them their weeks, let them read their treaty, and watch them carefully. I want to know everything about these humans. The weeks passed slowly. The Imperial fleet remained in orbit, watching. Human ships came and went from the surface, ignoring the armada above them as if it were nothing more than clouds in the sky. Human scientists requested permission to study the Imperial vessels. Human journalists requested interviews with the crew. Human merchants offered to sell them souvenirs. Crixton refused all requests. But he watched. He watched everything. He watched humans argue with each other about trivial matters. He watched them fight wars over invisible lines on maps. He watched them destroy their own environment while simultaneously trying to save it. He watched them create art of staggering beauty and weapons of terrible destruction. They were a contradiction, a species at war with itself, a civilization that could not decide if it wanted to reach for the stars or burn itself to ashes. And yet there was something about them that troubled him. Something in the way they moved, the way they spoke, the way they looked at his ships without fear. It was as if they knew something he did not. Finally, after exactly 3 weeks, Secretary General Chen returned to the flagship. She carried the treaty with her. It had been marked with hundreds of annotations, corrections, and suggested revisions. We've finished our review, she said, handing the document back to Crixton. He looked at the pages in disbelief. No species had ever annotated the treaty. No species had ever suggested revisions. These terms are unacceptable, Chen continued. Article 7 strips us of all independent military capability. Article 12 gives the Empire control over our scientific research. Article 23 requires us to surrender any citizens the Empire deems dangerous. And Article 47 appears to legalize the harvesting of human organs for imperial medical use. Crixton straightened. These are standard terms. All client species accept them. Then all client species are slaves. Chen's voice remained calm, but her eyes were hard. We will not sign this treaty. Then you will be conquered. You're welcome to try. Crixton felt his anger rising. You do not understand your situation, human? Our fleet could reduce your planet to ash in moments. Your species would cease to exist. Everything you have ever built, everything you have ever loved, would be gone. Chen looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed. It was not the nervous laughter of a frightened creature trying to hide its fear. It was the genuine, warm laughter of someone who had just heard an excellent joke. "Ambassador," she said, still smiling, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. We didn't ask to review the treaty because we were considering accepting it. We reviewed it because we wanted to understand exactly what kind of civilization we were dealing with. And what have you concluded? That you're bullies, that your entire empire is built on intimidation and fear, that you've never met a species that couldn't be frightened into submission." She turned and walked toward the airlock. "We're not frightened, Ambassador, and we don't submit." The airlock door closed behind her. Crixthan stood alone in the silence of his ship, surrounded by the greatest military force ever assembled, and for the first time in his long life, he felt the cold touch of doubt. What did these humans know that he did not? Emperor Zalveth Turanium did not take rejection well. For 1,000 years, he had ruled the galaxy with absolute authority. His word was law across 3 million star systems. Entire species lived and died at his command. He had crushed rebellions, conquered civilizations, and reduced worlds to rubble when they displeased him. And now a primitive species from a backwater planet had dared to refuse him. The Emperor summoned his war council to the throne room. 12 of the greatest military minds in the Empire gathered around the holographic display showing Earth, a small blue marble spinning in the darkness of space. "These humans must be taught their place," the Emperor said. His voice was cold, controlled, but everyone in the room could feel the rage beneath it. "They have insulted the Empire. They have rejected our generosity. They must be shown the consequences of such foolishness." Grand Admiral Vexnor stepped forward. He was the most decorated military commander in Imperial history, a veteran of 1,000 campaigns, a being who had never lost a battle. "Your Magnificence, shall I prepare an invasion force?" The Emperor shook his head. "Not yet. First, we will give them one more chance to submit. We will show them what they face. We will demonstrate our power so clearly that even these deluded creatures will understand their situation." He turned to Ambassador Crixthan, who stood at the edge of the gathering. "Return to Earth. Tell them we wish to conduct a demonstration of Imperial military capability. A parade, nothing more. A peaceful display of our strength." Crixthan bowed. "And if they refuse?" "They will not refuse. No species has ever refused a chance to see our might firsthand. The sight of our fleet in full formation has broken the will of civilizations far more advanced than theirs." The ambassador returned to Earth with the Emperor's invitation. To his surprise, the humans accepted immediately. Secretary General Chen even seemed pleased by the offer. "A military parade," she said, smiling. "How wonderful! We love parades." The demonstration was scheduled for the following week. On the appointed day, the Imperial fleet assembled above Earth in perfect formation. 10,000 warships arranged in the sacred pattern of conquest, each vessel taking its precise position according to protocols that had remained unchanged for 50,000 years. The weapons were charged. The shields were raised. The crews stood at attention, ready to begin the greatest display of military power the galaxy had ever seen. From the surface of Earth, billions of humans looked up at the sky. The Imperial ships blotted out the sun, casting shadows across entire continents. Children pointed and asked questions. Adults took photographs. News networks broadcast the event live to every corner of the planet. No one screamed. No one fled. No one fell to their knees in terror. They watched with the same mild curiosity they might show at a fireworks display. Grand Admiral Vexnor, commanding the demonstration from his flagship, felt the first stirrings of unease. He had conducted dozens of such displays. He had seen species collapse into chaos at the mere sight of his fleet. He had watched civilizations surrender before a single shot was fired. But these humans simply stood and watched. The demonstration began. The warships moved through a series of complex maneuvers, their massive hulls dancing through space with impossible grace. Weapon systems cycled through targeting patterns, tracking imaginary enemies. Shield generators pulsed with energy visible even from the planet's surface. The fleet spelled out messages in the sky, using precisely coordinated movements. Submit, obey, surrender. The humans responded by spelling out their own message using thousands of drones launched from the surface. It read, "Nice ships." Vexnor's scales turned dark with anger. He ordered the fleet to commence the final phase of the demonstration, a concentrated weapons discharge aimed at Earth's largest moon. 10,000 warships fired simultaneously. Beams of energy capable of cracking planets shot through space toward the lunar surface. The moon's crust shattered. Oceans of molten rock erupted from the impact sites. When the firing ceased, fully one-third of the moon had been reduced to glowing slag. "There," Vexnor announced over open channels. "Let that be a lesson to anyone who doubts Imperial power." The humans were silent for a long moment. Then Secretary General Chen's voice came over the communication system. "Impressive," she said. "Very impressive indeed. Now, would you like to see what we can do?" Before Vexner could respond, his sensors detected something impossible. A ship was decloaking directly beside his flagship. The vessel was small, barely larger than a shuttle. It was shaped like nothing he had ever seen, all smooth curves and flowing lines, without any visible weapons or engines. It had appeared from nowhere, passing through his shields as if they did not exist. His tactical officers scrambled to track the new contact. Their instruments returned nothing but errors. The ship seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, occupying spaces that should not be possible. "What is that?" Vexnor demanded. Before anyone could answer, every ship in the Imperial fleet lost power. It happened in an instant. One moment, 10,000 warships stood ready for battle. The next, they were dark and silent, drifting helplessly in the void. Lights flickered and died. Weapon systems shut down. Life support failed. Artificial gravity ceased. Billions of Imperial soldiers found themselves floating in darkness and surrounded by the cold of space. Vexnor grabbed a handrail as his flagship went dark. Emergency systems should have activated. Backup power should have engaged. Nothing happened. Through the observation windows, he could see the rest of his fleet. Every ship was dark. Every vessel was dead. The greatest military force ever assembled had been neutralized in the space of a heartbeat. The small human ship remained where it was, unchanged, unaffected. An hour passed. The crews of the Imperial fleet waited in darkness, breathing recycled air that grew staler by the minute. Some prayed to gods they had not believed in since childhood. Others made peace with deaths they believed were coming. A few attempted to restore power using methods that should have worked but did not. Then, as suddenly as it had vanished, power returned. Lights flickered on. Systems rebooted. Artificial gravity engaged with a gentle hum. Life support began circulating fresh air. Every ship in the fleet came back online simultaneously, as if nothing had happened. Vexnor stared at his tactical displays. His sensors showed all ships at full operational capacity. Weapons charged, shields raised, everything functioning perfectly. Except that nothing was the same. He had just witnessed the impossible. 10,000 warships, the most advanced military technology in the galaxy, disabled by a single vessel smaller than his personal shuttle. Disabled without weapons fire, without warning, without any chance of defense. His communications officer approached him with a message. "Grand Admiral, the humans are hailing us." "Put them through." Secretary General Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She was still smiling. "We hope you enjoyed your demonstration, Admiral. We certainly enjoyed ours." Vexnor struggled to keep his voice steady. "What did you do to my ships?" "Nothing permanent. We simply turned them off for a while. Consider it a courtesy. We wanted to show you what we could do without actually hurting anyone." "How? Our technology is beyond anything your civilization could possibly develop." Chen's smile widened. "Is it? Admiral, we've been watching your empire for quite some time. Your technology is impressive by certain standards. You have faster than light travel. You have energy weapons capable of destroying planets. You have shields that can withstand the fury of a star." She leaned forward slightly. "But you're still children playing with toys you don't understand. You've had these technologies for 50,000 years, and you haven't improved them at all. You've simply made more of them. Your ships today are essentially the same as your ships were when your empire began." Vexnor felt cold spreading through his body. "What are you saying?" I'm saying that while your empire has been busy conquering primitive species and feeling superior, we've been busy actually advancing. We've had these same technologies for centuries. We've moved beyond them. What you saw today, that little ship that disabled your fleet, that's not our most advanced technology. That's what we give to our children to play with. The Admiral had no response. Go home, Admiral, Chen said gently. Tell your Emperor what you witnessed here. Tell him that Earth is not interested in joining his empire. Tell him that we have no desire for war, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. And tell him. She paused, and for a moment her expression shifted. The diplomatic mask slipped, and Vexner saw something beneath it. Not anger, not triumph. Something that looked almost like pity. Tell him that we hoped for better from your civilization. We've been watching you for a very long time, hoping you would grow beyond your need to dominate and control. We wanted to meet you as equals, as friends, as partners in exploring this vast universe. Her voice softened. We're still hoping, but hope requires wisdom on your part. Please, Admiral, make the wise choice. The transmission ended. Vexnor stood in silence for a long moment. Then he turned to his crew. Set course for the Imperial Palace. Maximum speed. Sir? His navigation officer looked confused. We're retreating? We're reporting. The Emperor needs to know what we face. The fleet turned away from Earth and vanished into the darkness between stars. Behind them, the small human ship remained for a moment longer, watching them go. Then it too vanished, leaving nothing behind but the slowly cooling surface of a shattered moon. And far below, on the surface of Earth, Secretary General Chen turned off her communication device and sighed heavily. Do you think they'll listen? Asked one of her aides. Chen shook her head slowly. No, not yet. The Emperor's pride won't allow it. He'll try something else first. And when he does, we'll be ready. We've been ready for a very long time. She looked up at the sky, where the Imperial fleet had been just moments before. I just wish it didn't have to be this way. The Emperor refused to believe it. He sat on his throne as Grand Admiral Vexnor delivered his report, and with every word his ancient face grew darker. The other members of the War Council stood in silence, afraid to speak, afraid even to breathe too loudly. You expect me to believe, the Emperor said slowly, that a single primitive vessel disabled 10,000 of our most advanced warships? Vexnor kept his eyes fixed on the floor. I witnessed it myself, Your Magnificence. Every system failed simultaneously. We were helpless. Then your crews were incompetent. Your ships were poorly maintained. There must be an explanation that does not involve these humans possessing technology superior to our own. Your Magnificence, I have served the Empire for 600 years. I have commanded fleets in 1,000 battles. I know the difference between equipment failure and enemy action. This was not equipment failure. This was something beyond anything I have ever encountered. The Emperor rose from his throne. He was ancient beyond measure, his scales gray with age, but his eyes still burned with the fire of absolute power. Let me be clear, Admiral. I have ruled this empire for 1,000 years. I have absorbed 100,000 species into our civilization. I have crushed every enemy who dared oppose me. And you are telling me that a species that discovered fire only yesterday has somehow surpassed everything we have built over 50 millennia? I am telling you what I saw, Your Magnificence. The Emperor turned to his advisors. There must be another explanation. Perhaps these humans discovered ancient technology left behind by a more advanced race. Perhaps they made a deal with some unknown power. Perhaps they simply got lucky. Ambassador Crixton stepped forward. Your Magnificence, if I may suggest something? Speak. The humans spoke of wanting to meet us as equals, as partners. They seemed genuinely disappointed that we approached them as conquerors rather than friends. Perhaps if we engaged with them differently, we might learn more about their capabilities and their intentions. The Emperor considered this. His pride burned at the thought of treating these primitives as anything other than subjects. But his wisdom recognized the value of understanding one's enemy. Very well, he said finally. We will try a different approach. We will challenge them to the trials of supremacy. A murmur ran through the War Council. The trials of supremacy were an ancient tradition, dating back to the founding of the Empire. When two civilizations met as potential equals, they could compete in 5 domains to determine their relative standing. military strategy, scientific knowledge, artistic achievement, economic productivity, and philosophical wisdom. The empire had never lost the trials, not once in 50,000 years. If they truly believe themselves are equals, the emperor continued, they will accept the challenge. And when they fail, as they surely will, the entire galaxy will see them for what they are. Primitives who got lucky once. He smiled coldly. And then we will deal with them appropriately. The invitation was sent to Earth. To the emperor's surprise, the humans accepted immediately. We would be honored to participate in the trials of supremacy, Secretary General Chen responded. We look forward to the competition. The trials were scheduled to take place on the neutral space station of Kalindra, a massive construct orbiting a dying star at the center of the empire. Billions of beings from across the galaxy traveled to witness the event. News networks broadcast every moment to trillions more. Everyone wanted to see the primitives humiliated. The first trial was military strategy. Imperial tacticians had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. They had studied every battle ever fought, developed algorithms that could predict enemy movements with perfect accuracy, created strategies so complex that lesser minds could not comprehend them. The human team consisted of 3 individuals, a retired general, a game designer, and a 12-year-old girl who had won something called a chess championship. The trial was conducted using a sophisticated war simulation. Each side commanded identical fleets in a virtual battle space. The goal was simple: destroy the enemy's command ship. The Imperial tacticians moved first, executing a formation that had never been defeated in 10,000 years of simulated and actual combat. The human general leaned over to the game designer and whispered something. The game designer nodded and whispered to the girl. The girl smiled and made a move. 12 turns later, the Imperial command ship was destroyed. The Imperial team demanded a rematch. They received one, and another, and another. The humans won every single game. By the 15th match, the Imperial tacticians were visibly shaken. Their strategies were being countered before they were even executed. Their formations were being dismantled with surgical precision. It was as if the humans could see the future. How are you doing this? The lead Imperial tactician demanded. The 12-year-old girl looked up at him with innocent eyes. You always do the same things in the same order. It's easy to guess what comes next. We are using the most advanced military algorithms in the galaxy. I know. We figured them out after the 3rd game. The trial ended with a human victory. The second trial was scientific knowledge. The Empire's greatest scientists assembled to answer questions about physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics. These were minds that had unlocked the secrets of faster-than-light travel, mastered the manipulation of gravity, learned to harness the power of black holes. The human team consisted of researchers from various universities, none of whom had published anything particularly noteworthy by Imperial standards. The questions began. Complex problems that Imperial scientists had struggled with for centuries were posed to both teams. The humans solved them immediately. Not just solved them, but explained them in ways that made the Imperial scientists realize they had been approaching the problems incorrectly all along. The humans pointed out fundamental errors in Imperial scientific theory, errors that had gone unnoticed for millennia because no one had ever thought to question the basic assumptions. By the end of the trial, the Imperial scientists were not just defeated, they were taking notes. The third trial was artistic achievement. The Empire had produced masterpieces that had moved countless species to tears, music that captured the essence of the cosmos, paintings that seemed to contain entire universes, sculptures that defied the laws of physics. The human artists were unknown. A painter who had never exhibited her work, a musician who played in small venues, a writer who had only published a few short stories. The human painter created a simple portrait of an old woman. Nothing special by Imperial standards. No advanced techniques, no hidden dimensions. Just an old woman looking at the viewer with tired eyes and a gentle smile. Half the audience wept. The human musician played a melody on a simple stringed instrument. No computer enhancement. No psychic harmonics, just notes arranged in a particular order. Beings who had not felt emotion in centuries found themselves overcome. The human writer read a story about a child who lost a pet. It was short, it was simple. It contained nothing that Imperial literature had not covered a million times before. When she finished, there was complete silence. Then applause that lasted for an hour. The Imperial artists did not understand. Their works were technically superior in every way. Their techniques were more advanced. Their compositions were more complex. But the human works had something theirs lacked. Something raw, something true, something that spoke directly to the soul in a language that transcended culture and species. The fourth trial was economic productivity. Both teams were given identical simulated economies to manage. The goal was to maximize growth while maintaining stability. The imperial economists were the finest in the galaxy. They had managed economies spanning millions of worlds. They understood every variable, every factor, every possible outcome. The human economists looked at the simulation for approximately 5 minutes. Then they implemented changes that the imperial team considered insane. They reduced central control. They allowed for inefficiencies. They introduced elements of randomness and individual choice. Within the simulated time frame of 1 decade, the human economy was outperforming the imperial economy by a factor of 10. Within a century, it was outperforming by a factor of 1,000. The imperial economists demanded to know how this was possible. "Your economy is a machine," one of the human economists explained. "It does exactly what it's designed to do. Nothing more. Our economy is an ecosystem. It adapts. It evolves. It surprises us constantly. But how do you control it? We don't. That's the point." The fifth and final trial was philosophical wisdom. This was the emperor's favorite domain. Imperial philosophers had spent 50,000 years refining their understanding of existence, consciousness, morality, and meaning. They had developed frameworks that explained everything, predicted everything, justified everything. The human philosophers were professors from small colleges, people who spent their lives asking questions rather than providing answers. The debate topic was simple. What is the purpose of civilization? The imperial philosophers went first. They presented a comprehensive theory that had guided the empire for millennia. Civilization existed to impose order on chaos, to lift primitive species toward enlightenment, to spread the light of knowledge and reason across the darkness of the cosmos. The human philosophers listened carefully. Then they began asking questions. Simple questions. Questions that any child might ask. Questions that the imperial philosophers had never considered because they had assumed they already knew the answers. If civilization exists to impose order, why does your order require conquest? If you seek to enlighten primitive species, why do you not ask them what they want to learn? If you spread knowledge, why do you suppress knowledge that contradicts your beliefs? If your purpose is to bring light to darkness, why is your empire built on the darkness of subjugation? The imperial philosophers had answers. They had always had answers. But under the gentle pressure of the human questions, their answers began to sound hollow. Assumptions they had never examined were exposed. Contradictions they had never acknowledged were revealed. By the end of the debate, the imperial philosophers were not defending their position. They were questioning everything they had ever believed. The trials ended. The humans had won all 5 domains. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the results were announced. The greatest civilization in history had been defeated by primitives in every category of achievement. Emperor Zalveth IX sat alone in his chambers that night, staring at the wall. He had ruled for 1,000 years. He had never known defeat. He had never imagined it was possible. And now in front of the entire galaxy, he had been made to look like a fool. His rage burned cold and deep. These humans had to be destroyed. Not absorbed, not conquered. Destroyed. Erased from existence. Every trace of them wiped clean from the cosmos. He began to plan. The Emperor's plan was simple. If the humans could not be conquered through strength or defeated through competition, they would be eliminated through treachery. No announcement. No warning. No chance for them to demonstrate their mysterious superiority again. Just death. He assembled a secret fleet in the darkness between galaxies. 100 of the most powerful warships ever constructed, each one carrying weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. These were not ships of war. They were ships of extinction. The crews were chosen for their absolute loyalty. They were told nothing of their mission until they were far from any listening ears. When they learned they would be destroying Earth and everyone on it, some hesitated. But the Emperor's word was law, and the Emperor's law demanded obedience. The fleet commander was Admiral Thexful, a being known throughout the Empire for his ruthless efficiency. He had once destroyed an entire civilization because they were late with their tribute payments. He felt nothing for the humans or their fate. They were simply obstacles to be removed. The mission is simple, Thexfall told his captains. We enter the human star system, we fire everything we have at their planet, and we leave. No negotiations, no warnings, no survivors. What about the technology they demonstrated? One captain asked. The vessel that disabled the Grand Admiral's fleet? A trick, an anomaly. It will not work against our weapons. And even if it does, we have been equipped with countermeasures developed by our finest scientists. The captain did not look convinced, but he knew better than to argue. The fleet departed in absolute silence. They traveled through the spaces between stars, avoiding all trade routes and communication networks. They approached Earth from a direction that no human telescope could observe. They moved slowly, carefully, like hunters stalking prey. It took them 3 months to reach their destination. The human star system appeared on their sensors, exactly as expected. One yellow sun, 8 planets, and there, third from the star, the small blue world that had caused so much trouble. Admiral Thexaval ordered his fleet into attack formation. 100 warships spread across 1,000,000 kilometers of space, each one locking onto a different target on Earth's surface. Cities, military installations, industrial centers. Every location that might allow the humans to survive or resist. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. Thexval took one last look at the planet. Such a small thing, such an insignificant speck of rock and water. And yet it had humiliated the greatest civilization in galactic history. Fire, he said. Nothing happened. The weapons remained silent. The missiles stayed in their tubes. The energy beams did not charge. Report, Thexval demanded. Sir, we're experiencing... I don't understand, sir. All systems show ready, but nothing is responding to commands. Override manually. We're trying, sir. Nothing works. Thexval felt the first stirrings of fear. He had been told this would not happen. He had been promised countermeasures. He had been assured that the human's trick would not work twice. Then the lights went out. Just as they had for Grand Admiral Vexnor, power failed across the entire fleet. 100 warships became 100 dark hulks drifting in the void. Life support failed. Gravity ceased. Communications died. But this time was different. This time, the ships did not simply lose power. This time, they began to move. In the darkness, Thexval felt his flagship accelerating. He grabbed for something to hold on to as the ship began spinning, turning, changing direction against the will of its crew. Through the observation ports, he could see the rest of his fleet. Every ship was moving, but not under its own power. Something was pushing them, pulling them, manipulating them like toys in the hands of a child. The fleet gathered together, drawn by invisible forces into a tight cluster. Then as one, they began to move away from Earth. Faster and faster, accelerating toward the edge of the star system, toward the darkness beyond. Hours passed. When power finally returned, Thexval found himself on the far side of the galaxy, so distant from Earth that even light would take 100,000 years to make the journey. His communications officer worked frantically to establish contact with the Empire. When they finally succeeded, they received a message that had been waiting for them. It was from Earth. Secretary General Chen appeared on screen, but she was not smiling this time. Her face was grave. Admiral Thexval, we know why you came. We know what you intended to do. We have known about your mission since before it was conceived. Thexval said nothing. There was nothing to say. We could have destroyed your fleet, Chen continued. We could have killed every being aboard your ships. Instead, we chose to move you somewhere safe, somewhere you can no longer threaten us. You cannot hide from the Empire, Thexval said. More fleets will come. We will never stop. We know. That is why we are sending a message directly to your Emperor. The screen flickered and a new image appeared. It was the Imperial Palace, the Emperor's private chamber. the place where Zalveth Nye made his most secret decisions. The Emperor was there, sitting on his throne, surrounded by his guards, and standing before him, as if they had appeared from nowhere, were three humans. "How did you get in here?" the Emperor demanded. His guards drew weapons, but the humans did not seem concerned. "We walked," one of them said simply, "through your shields, through your walls, through everything you built to keep us out." "Kill them," the Emperor ordered. The guards fired. Energy beams that could vaporize steel passed through the humans without effect, striking the wall behind them and leaving scorch marks. "We're not really here," another human explained. "We're projecting ourselves from Earth. What you're seeing is an image, a representation. We can make ourselves solid if we choose, but right now, we choose not to." The Emperor's face twisted with rage and fear. "What do you want?" "To show you something." The air around the throne room began to shimmer. Images appeared, floating in the space around them. Images of the galaxy as seen from above. Images of the Empire and all its territory. Images of Earth, tiny and alone at the edge of the spiral arm. "This is your empire," the first human said. 3 million star systems, 100,000 subject species, 50,000 years of history. The images zoomed out. The empire became a small cluster of lights in a vast darkness. "This is the galaxy. 400 billion stars, countless worlds, room enough for 1 million empires." The images zoomed out again. The galaxy became a spiral of light, one among billions. "This is the universe. More galaxies than there are stars in your empire. More space than could ever be explored, even if your civilization lasted for 1 trillion years." The humans turned to face the Emperor. "You think you are powerful. You think your empire matters. You think conquering a few million stars makes you significant. We have watched you for a very long time, Emperor. We have watched you grow from a single world to a civilization spanning the stars. We had such hopes for you. We thought you might become something wonderful. Instead, you became bullies. You conquered. You controlled. You destroyed anyone who resisted. You built your greatness on the suffering of others. We could end your empire today. We could dissolve every bond that holds it together, free every species you have enslaved, reduce your palace to atoms with a thought. But we do not want to destroy you. We want you to grow. We want you to become the civilization you could be, instead of the civilization you have chosen to be." The Emperor stared at them with ancient, hateful eyes. "And if I refuse? If I send fleet after fleet until one finally succeeds in destroying you?" The humans were silent for a moment. "Your fleet is currently stranded 100,000 light years from home. Their supplies will last approximately 2 months. After that, they will begin to die." The Emperor paled. "We moved them rather than destroying them. We could return them to you now safely, without harm, or we could leave them where they are. The choice is yours. What do you want? We want you to think. We want you to consider what you have become and whether that is what you want to be. We want you to ask yourself whether domination is really the only way to find meaning in this universe. We do not want your submission, Emperor. We do not want tribute or worship or fear. We want you to be better. We believe you can be. Consider our offer. We will wait." The images faded. The humans disappeared. The throne room was silent. Emperor Zalveth IX sat alone on his throne, surrounded by guards who could not protect him, in a palace that could not keep enemies out, ruler of an empire that had been shown to be nothing more than a small light in an infinite darkness. For the first time in 1,000 years, he had no idea what to do. And far across the galaxy, a stranded fleet waited to learn whether they would live or die. Their fate depending entirely on the pride of one ancient being and whether he could learn to swallow it. 3 weeks passed in silence. Emperor Zalveth IX did not leave his chamber. He did not eat. He did not sleep. He sat on his throne and stared at the walls, lost in thoughts that had troubled no emperor before him. His advisors came and went, offering counsel, begging for orders, warning of the instability spreading through the empire as rumors of the human confrontation leaked to the public. He ignored them all. Admiral Thexavol's fleet remained stranded at the edge of the universe. Their supplies dwindled. Their crews grew desperate. Messages begged for rescue, for assistance, for any response at all. The Emperor read each message and said nothing. On the 22nd day, he finally spoke. "Bring me Ambassador Crixton." The ambassador arrived within hours, his ancient scales showing the stress of the past weeks. He had aged visibly since his first mission to Earth, as if the encounter with humanity had taken something vital from him. "You wish to see me, your magnificence?" The Emperor did not look at him. "You spoke with them more than anyone. You negotiated with them. Tell me truthfully, what did you see?" Crixton chose his words carefully. "I saw a species that should not exist, your magnificence. By every measure of galactic history, they should be primitive. They should be struggling to survive. They should be grateful for our attention. And yet they looked at our fleet as if it were nothing. They spoke to us as if we were children making threats. They showed no fear because they had nothing to fear." Crixton paused. "They were not pretending, your magnificence. They genuinely saw us as we might see insects. Interesting, perhaps. Worthy of study, but not threatening. Then why did they not destroy us? They could have. They made that clear. I believe they told us the truth. They do not want to destroy us. They want us to become something better." The Emperor finally turned to face his ambassador. His eyes were different now. The rage that had burned in them for weeks had faded, replaced by something that might have been exhaustion or might have been the first stirrings of wisdom. "I have ruled this empire for 1,000 years, he said slowly. "I have done things that would horrify most beings. I have ordered the death of billions. I have destroyed civilizations that resisted. I have built my legacy on the bones of those who opposed me. Your magnificence. Let me finish." The Emperor raised a hand. "I did these things because I believed they were necessary. I believed the empire could only survive through strength. I believed weakness would be exploited, mercy would be punished, kindness would be rewarded with betrayal." He looked down at his hands, ancient and weathered, stained with more blood than he could remember. "These humans have shown me something I never expected to see. They have shown me what true strength looks like, and it looks nothing like what I have built." The Emperor rose from his throne for the first time in weeks. He walked slowly to the window that overlooked his capital city, a metropolis that stretched to the horizon, home to billions of beings who lived under his absolute rule. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them I wish to speak with Secretary General Chen, in person." Crixton bowed. "It will be done, your magnificence." "And Crixton, have my fleet returned, every ship, every crew member, unharmed." The ambassador's eyes widened. "You accept their terms?" "I accept that I have been a fool. The terms will come later." The meeting was arranged for the following week. Secretary General Chen traveled to the Imperial Palace alone. No guards, no weapons, no protection of any kind. She walked through the streets of the capital as if she were a tourist, stopping to admire architecture, speaking with citizens who gathered to stare at the legendary human. When she reached the palace, she was escorted directly to the throne room. Emperor Zalveth IX waited for her. He had removed his ceremonial armor. He wore simple robes, the kind worn by scholars and philosophers rather than conquerors. He looked older than he had in their previous encounters, as if the weight of centuries had finally caught up with him. "Secretary General," he said, "thank you for coming." Chen bowed slightly. "Thank you for inviting me, your magnificence. Please, call me Zalveth. Titles seem meaningless now." She nodded and took a seat across from him. Between them stood no guards, no advisors, no witnesses, just two beings from civilizations that had nearly gone to war. "I have questions," the Emperor said. "Before we discuss anything else, I need to understand." "Ask. How long have you been watching us?" Chen considered the question. "Our species achieved technological transcendence approximately 12,000 years ago. We have been aware of your empire since shortly after its founding. 12,000 years, while we were still learning to harness nuclear fusion." "Yes. Why did you not reveal yourselves? Why did you not guide us, help us, show us a better path?" "Would you have listened?" The Emperor was silent. "We tried once," Chen continued. "Long ago, we made contact with another rising civilization. We offered them our knowledge, our technology, our guidance. We thought we could help them skip the mistakes, avoid the suffering, grow directly into wisdom. What happened? They were destroyed, not by us, but by themselves. Our gifts were too much for them. They had not earned their power, so they did not understand its responsibilities. They burned themselves to ash within a century. Chen's voice softened. We learn from that mistake. True growth cannot be given. It must be earned. A civilization must face its own challenges, make its own mistakes, find its own way to wisdom. We can point toward the light, but we cannot carry you to it. So you watched. For 50,000 years, you watched us conquer and destroy and enslave, and you did nothing. We watched with hope. Your species has potential, Zalveth, great potential. We saw flashes of beauty in your art, glimpses of wisdom in your philosophy, moments of mercy even in your wars. We believed that eventually you would grow past your need for domination. And when I sent a fleet to destroy your world, we were disappointed, but not surprised. Chen smiled sadly. Growth is rarely linear. Sometimes a species must touch the very bottom before it can begin to rise. The Emperor nodded slowly. So what happens now? That depends entirely on you. What are our options? You could continue as you have. You could rebuild your fleets, train your soldiers, try again to destroy us. You would fail. You would keep failing until your civilization exhausted itself trying to defeat an enemy beyond your comprehension. Or you could choose a different path. You could take what you have learned and use it to become something new. You could release the species you have conquered. You could transform your empire from a prison into a community. You could become the civilization you were always capable of being. And your people? What would you do? We would help, not by giving you answers, but by asking questions. Not by solving your problems, but by helping you solve them yourselves. We would be partners in your growth, not masters of your fate. The Emperor stood and walked to the window. Outside, his city spread to the horizon, filled with beings who had known nothing but imperial rule for thousands of years. Everything I have built, he said quietly, everything my predecessors built, it would all have to change. Yes, many will resist. There will be those who prefer the old ways. There will be conflict, perhaps even civil war. Almost certainly. And you will not help us suppress the resistance? We will not help you suppress anything. Freedom means freedom, even the freedom to make mistakes. The Emperor turned back to face her. Why do you care what becomes of us? We tried to destroy you. We are everything you claim to oppose. Why not simply leave us to our fate? Chen stood and walked to join him at the window. For a long moment they stood together, looking out at a civilization that stood on the edge of transformation. Because we were you once, she said finally. Long ago we were conquerors too. We built empires on the suffering of others. We believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. What changed you? We met beings who were to us what we are to you. Beings so far beyond us that our greatest weapons were toys to them. And instead of destroying us, they showed us what we could become. She turned to face him. Every great civilization in the universe was once a primitive species making primitive mistakes. Growth is not a gift, it is a journey. And no one makes that journey alone. We made you look like fools before the entire galaxy. Chen laughed softly. You made yourselves look like fools. We simply held up a mirror. But that is the beginning of wisdom, is it not? To see yourself clearly, without the comfortable lies you tell yourself to feel better. The Emperor was silent for a long time. Then slowly he did something he had not done in 1,000 years. He knelt. Secretary General Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Empire and all the species under our dominion, I ask for your guidance. Teach us. Help us become what we should have been. Chen reached down and took his hand, lifting him back to his feet. You do not kneel to us, Zalveth. We are not your masters, we are your friends. She smiled warmly, and friends help each other stand. 1 year later, Emperor Zalveth Damine addressed the galaxy. He announced the dissolution of the Galactic Empire and its reformation as the Galactic Community. All subject species were granted independence. All conquered worlds were returned. A new charter was written, One based on cooperation rather than domination, partnership rather than submission. Humanity was invited to join, not as leaders, but as members. Equals among equals. They accepted. The transition was not easy. There were rebellions, conflicts, and moments when the old ways seemed preferable to the chaos of freedom. But slowly, painfully, the galaxy began to change. And far from the center of what had once been an empire of fear, on a small blue world orbiting an ordinary yellow star, Secretary General Chen watched the news broadcast and smiled. The humans had made the galaxy's greatest empire look like fools, and in doing so, they had helped them become wise.